Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever looked at someone you deeply care about and wondered, why do they pull away just when things start to feel real? You text them, they go silent. You get close, they disappear. You give your heart, and suddenly they seem distant. But what if I told you they're not avoiding you because they don't care? What if it's because they care too much? See, when an avoidance starts to truly feel something deep, something that shakes their emotional walls, they panic. Not because you're wrong for them, but because you're exactly what they've been waiting for. Love for them isn't safe. It's a battlefield between their longing for connection and their fear of being seen. And in that moment when they pull away, they're not rejecting you. They're fighting themselves. They're trying to understand how to love without losing control. So today I want to open your eyes to a truth most people miss when an avoidant does this. When they step back, when they go silent, it's not distance you're seeing, it's vulnerability. It's the raw, unspoken sign that love is going to break through the walls they spent a lifetime building. By the end of this message, you'll not only understand them, you'll learn how to reach them, how to see them, and maybe how to love them in a way that makes them feel safe enough to finally stay. When love begins to touch the heart of an avoidant, something profound happens inside them. It's not a feeling of peace or comfort at first. It's a rush of confusion, intensity, and fear. To someone who has spent years building emotional walls, love doesn't feel safe. It feels like danger wrapped in warmth. The closer they get to someone who truly matters, the louder their mind becomes. Their instinct isn't to move forward, it's to retreat, to find space, to regain control. And that retreat is often misread by others as rejection, indifference, or emotional coldness, when in truth it's an internal battle between desire and fear. Avoidants have often learned early in life that emotional closeness brings pain. Maybe they grew up in environments where affection was conditional, where love was inconsistent, or where vulnerability was used against them. Over time, they learn that independence is safety and that distance is protection. So when someone begins to matter to them, that old wiring lights up again. Their nervous system doesn't say, this is love. It says, this is danger. You could get hurt. Their instinct tells them to pull back, to create space, to hide behind silence or distraction until the emotional storm calms down. But here's what most people miss. Pulling away doesn't mean they've stopped caring. In fact, it often means the opposite. They retreat because they care so deeply that they feel overwhelmed. Their emotions are stronger than they can manage, and avoidance becomes a form of emotional self-regulation. It's their way of saying, I'm scared, I need to feel safe before I can come closer. So when love begins to grow, you may see them go quiet, take longer to reply, or become distant. That space is not rejection. It's a moment of emotional recalibration. The mistake many partners make is to take this retreat personally. They chase, they question, they demand answers, not realizing that this only pushes the avoidant further away. To an avoidant, pressure feels like threat. When they feel cornered, their fear response intensifies. But when you step back with understanding, when you give them space without judgment, they begin to feel safe again. And safety is what allows them to return. The truth is, love for an avoidant is not a straight path. It's a series of steps forward and steps back. They might reach out and connect deeply one moment, then withdraw the next. It's not a game, and it's not manipulation. It's emotional survival. Each retreat is their way of testing whether love will remain safe when they are not performing or pleasing. They're asking silently, will you still be here when I pull away? Will you see me, not just my distance? When you can understand that love makes them retreat because it's too intense, not because they don't care, everything changes. You stop chasing their presence and start respecting their rhythm. You realize that the retreat is temporary, that beneath it lies a heart that is learning how to trust, how to surrender, and how to love without fear. What they need most is not more attention, it's more understanding. So when you see an avoidant step back after moments of closeness, don't assume love has vanished. Realize that love is just beginning to touch a part of them they've long kept hidden. The retreat isn't a door closing, it's a heart trembling at the edge of transformation. And if you can hold steady in that space, without reacting from your own fear, you'll witness something powerful. Slowly, cautiously, they'll start to return. Not because they were chased, but because they finally feel safe enough to stay. Distance is the avoidance armor. It's not something they consciously choose to hurt you. It's something their mind and body automatically create to protect them from emotional overwhelm. When things start to feel too close, too intimate, or too emotionally charged, their instinctive reaction is to pull away. They don't know how to exist in that intensity without feeling like they're losing control or exposing a part of themselves they've spent years hiding. Distance becomes their safest way to breathe again, to regain emotional balance, and to feel like they're back in control of their world. An avoidant person often equates closeness with loss of freedom. The moment someone starts to mean too much, they feel like their independence. The very thing that makes them feel safe is under threat. So when emotions rise, they subconsciously reach for the one thing that gives them back their sense of safety: distance. It might come in the form of silence, withdrawal, distraction, or even pushing you away with cold words. But underneath that behavior lies fear, not rejection. Fear of being seen too deeply, of being depended on, or of depending on someone else. To them, dependence feels dangerous because it opens the door to disappointment and pain. This is why when they create distance, it's not because they've stopped caring. It's because they care so much that it's triggering all their old defense systems. The emotional intensity feels too real, too unpredictable. They fear being swallowed by it, losing themselves in someone else's expectations or emotions. The paradox of the avoidant is that they crave connection, but are terrified of it at the same time. They want love, but they don't know how to stay open without feeling vulnerable. So they do the only thing that feels familiar, step back and rebuild their sense of control from afar. To the partner of an avoidant, this can feel confusing and painful. One day they're affectionate, open, and deeply connected. The next day, they seem emotionally distant, unresponsive, or distracted. It feels like being pulled close only to be pushed away again. But what's important to understand is that this pattern isn't about you. It's about their relationship with safety. Distance to them equals safety. It's a pause, not a goodbye. It's a protective layer that helps them process the intensity of what they're feeling without becoming consumed by it. When you understand that distance is their defense mechanism, you stop personalizing their withdrawal. You stop chasing, blaming, or trying to fix them. You realize that what they need in those moments is space that feels respectful, not abandonment that feels punishing. The more you pressure an avoidant during their retreat, the more they feel unsafe. But the more you remain steady, patient, and emotionally consistent, the more they start to trust that your love isn't going to demand or consume them. Trust grows when they realize they can take distance without losing connection. Inside, the avoidant is often torn. They know they're creating space, and part of them even feels guilty for it. They may miss you while staying away, but until their internal alarm quiets down, they can't come close again. That's why emotional safety is the key. It allows their walls to lower naturally without force. When you can hold space for their distance without judgment, you're giving them a new experience, one that teaches them that love doesn't have to mean losing freedom. In truth, the distance of an avoidant is not a sign of emotional coldness. It's a language of fear. It says, I'm scared to need you. I'm scared to be seen. I'm scared to get hurt. When you can recognize that, you begin to meet them with empathy rather than frustration. Over time, that empathy becomes the bridge that allows them to feel safe enough to stay closer for longer. Distance may be their defense, but with patience and understanding, love can become their safety. Consistency and calm presence are the two forces that slowly melt the emotional armor of an avoidant. They are not moved by grand gestures, long emotional speeches, or dramatic declarations of love. What speaks to them most is steadiness, the kind of energy that doesn't demand, doesn't chase, and doesn't threaten their sense of space. For an avoidant, love becomes believable only when it feels safe, and safety is built through consistency. When someone shows up with patience, with calmness, and with reliability, the avoidant's nervous system begins to relax. They start to learn that closeness doesn't always lead to chaos or pain. Avoidants often grew up in environments where love was unpredictable or conditional. One day it was present, the next day it was withdrawn. They learned not to rely on anyone emotionally because reliance led to disappointment. So when someone enters their life and shows consistent emotional availability, no games, no extremes, just presence, it disrupts their old programming. At first, they might not even trust it. They'll test it, sometimes unconsciously. They might retreat, delay replies, or create emotional space to see if you'll still be there when they return. If you react with frustration, withdrawal, or emotional volatility, it confirms their fear that closeness equals instability. But if you stay grounded, if your energy remains steady, you begin to rewire their understanding of connection. Calm presence communicates something words cannot. It tells them they are safe even when they're scared. Avoidants aren't used to calm love. They're used to emotional intensity or disconnection. So when you respond with patience rather than panic, you teach them that love doesn't have to threaten their independence. It can exist alongside space, individuality, and choice. Your calmness becomes the emotional mirror they use to regulate their own fear. When you don't take their distance personally, when you don't react from insecurity, you allow them to feel seen without being smothered. Consistency doesn't mean overextending yourself or tolerating neglect. It means showing emotional maturity and stability, expressing care when it's right, maintaining communication without pressure, and holding boundaries without anger. It means being the person who doesn't disappear when things get complicated, but also doesn't force connection when they need time to breathe. That balance is powerful because it breaks the avoidance pattern of fearing love as something consuming. You become the example that love can coexist with respect for space. When an avoidant begins to feel safe through consistency, their inner walls start to lower. It doesn't happen overnight. They might take one small step closer, then retreat again. But each time they come back, it's because they trust your stability more. They start to open up in moments that used to scare them. They might share something personal, initiate contact, or show affection in subtle ways. To someone who values control and independence, these are enormous steps. They're not dramatic, but they're real, and they're born from the quiet assurance that you won't punish their fear or abandon them for needing time. The magic of calm presence is that it allows love to grow naturally rather than forcing it. Avoidants don't respond to pressure, they respond to safety. When they know you're not trying to fix or change them, they begin to change on their own. The consistency of your energy gives them a sense of emotional predictability, something they rarely experienced before. It becomes the foundation for trust. And trust for an avoidant is the gateway to intimacy. Over time, consistency becomes a form of love they can finally understand. It's not about constant contact or overexpression. It's about reliability. The simple act of showing up, of being calm when they're distant, of staying open when they're unsure, creates an emotional rhythm that feels safe. And when they finally realize that your presence doesn't demand their surrender but welcomes their pace, they start to stay, not because they have to, but because they want to. Real connection with an avoidant requires patience, not pressure. It's one of the hardest truths to accept, because when you care deeply about someone, your instinct is to close the distance, to fix what feels broken, to bring them back closer. But that very energy, the urgency, the emotional push, the demand for reassurance is what makes an avoidant retreat even further. Pressure to connect feels to them like emotional suffocation. They don't interpret it as love, they interpret it as a loss of control. So if you want to truly reach them, you must learn to slow down, to give space, and to understand that love built through patience is the only kind they can trust. Avoidants don't respond to emotional intensity, they respond to emotional safety. When they feel someone pushing for closeness, their nervous system sends a danger signal that says, I'm losing my space, I'm losing my freedom. And to someone who equates safety with independence, that's terrifying. They'll instinctively pull away, not because they don't care, but because their body and mind are conditioned to believe that closeness equals vulnerability, and vulnerability equals pain. The more you push, the more they shut down. The more you chase, the more they withdraw. The key isn't to convince them to open up. It's to create an environment where opening up feels natural. Patience and love with an avoidant means allowing them to come closer at their own pace. It means giving them the emotional room to process feelings they may not even understand yet. Avoidants often need time to translate emotion into understanding, because feelings for them are complex, sometimes even foreign. They've spent much of their life avoiding deep emotional experiences. When those emotions surface, they need time to make sense of them. Pressuring them for answers or instant intimacy only overwhelms them. But when you stay steady and patient, it signals safety, the one thing that helps them stay present. Patience doesn't mean passivity or tolerating neglect. It's about being emotionally grounded enough to give space without fear. It's knowing that connection isn't built through chasing or demanding, but through quiet consistency and understanding. It's holding your own boundaries while respecting theirs. When you practice patience, you communicate something powerful. I see you. I'm not here to control you. I'm here to connect when you're ready. That message speaks directly to their heart because it removes the sense of threat that love once carried for them. True patience also means managing your own emotional reactions. When they go silent or withdraw, it's easy to feel insecure, rejected, or unloved. But reacting from that place, sending multiple texts, making accusations, or demanding reassurance reinforces their fear that closeness equals emotional chaos. Instead, grounding yourself, focusing on your own calm energy, and maintaining open but non-pressuring communication allows them to reapproach you in their own time. The patience you show during their retreat becomes the trust they feel when they return. The beauty of patience is that it transforms connection from something forced into something chosen. When you give an avoidant space without resentment, they notice. Deep down, they feel gratitude even if they can't express it right away. Over time, this patience becomes the foundation of intimacy. They begin to feel that your love doesn't trap them, it frees them. It gives them the security to express without fear, to stay without feeling caged, and to trust without resistance. Love that lasts isn't about how fast it grows, it's about how safe it feels. And with avoidance, safety is the soil where connection blooms. When you replace pressure with patience, you stop chasing affection and start inspiring it. You become the calm in the storm of their emotions. And slowly they learn that love doesn't have to be overwhelming. It can be gentle. It can be steady. It can be patient. And when they finally realize that, they start to open, not because you demanded it, but because they feel free enough to choose it. When an avoidant returns after pulling away, it's not a casual act. It's a silent declaration of trust. For them, coming back isn't easy. It means they've gone through an internal struggle, faced their fears, and decided on their own terms that the connection feels safe enough to revisit. Most people misunderstand this moment. They think the avoidant simply got bored or changed their mind, but the truth is far deeper. An avoidant's return is one of the clearest signs that their emotions are real, that something inside them values you enough to overcome the instinct to stay hidden. It's not the words they say that reveal their love. It's the courage it takes to come back after retreating. Avoidants don't withdraw lightly. When they pull away, it's a survival instinct, not a rejection. The emotional intensity of closeness overwhelms them, and their natural reaction is to step back to regain control. During that distance, they're not necessarily forgetting you. Often they're thinking, processing, and trying to find emotional balance. They analyze their feelings quietly, away from the noise, because introspection is their way of feeling safe again. When they decide to return, it's because they've reconciled those emotions enough to face connection without panic. Their return is their way of saying, I trust you not to hurt me, even if those words never leave their mouth. The return of an avoidant should be met with calm recognition. not punishment or interrogation. It's tempting to question them, to ask where they've been, why they disappeared, or why they didn't communicate. But that reaction can reinforce their deepest fear that closeness always comes with emotional punishment. When they feel judged for needing space, they associate love with danger again, and the cycle repeats. The best response is steady acceptance. That doesn't mean ignoring boundaries or excusing unhealthy behavior. It means responding with maturity, not emotional reactivity. A simple, grounded response like, "I'm glad to hear from you," holds far more power than emotional confrontation. Their return also reveals that your energy mattered. During their retreat, they were watching not through messages or constant contact, but through emotional presence. If you handled their withdrawal with grace, patience, and respect, they notice. They may not say it, but they feel it. Your calmness becomes proof that connection doesn't equal chaos. You become the safe base they can return to without fear of losing themselves. And every time they return, that trust deepens. Each cycle of withdrawal and return, when handled with compassion, rewires their emotional pattern a little more toward openness. It's important to understand that when an avoidant comes back, it's progress, not perfection. They may still pull away again, not because they're playing games, but because healing takes time. Their instinct to protect themselves is deeply ingrained. The difference is that now, each return means their fear is loosening its grip. They're testing emotional closeness in small doses, building confidence that intimacy can coexist with independence. Every return means they're learning that love doesn't have to equal loss of control. It can mean shared strength, understanding, and space. When you recognize their return as a sign of trust, you shift from frustration to appreciation. You start seeing love in their actions rather than expecting constant words or emotional displays. For avoidance, trust is love's language. Their willingness to come back, to face connection again despite fear, is a quiet but powerful expression of care. It shows that they're trying, maybe not in the way you're used to, but in the only way they know how. Patience, understanding, and emotional steadiness create a bridge they can always cross back over. When they come back and find you calm, not resentful, they feel seen and safe. And with each return, that sense of safety grows stronger. Eventually, the distance becomes shorter, the silence less frequent, and the connection more natural. So when an avoidant returns, recognize it for what it truly is, not hesitation, but courage. In that moment, they're not avoiding you. They're choosing you quietly, but completely. True love with an avoidant is not built through pursuit or persuasion. It's built through safety. Safety is the language that unlocks their heart, the foundation that allows them to stay when every instinct tells them to run. For an avoidant, love has often been associated with fear, control, or loss. They've learned that letting someone in means surrendering their emotional independence, and that kind of vulnerability feels dangerous. So when they meet someone who offers love without threat, love that respects space, listens without judgment, and stands firm without pressure, they start to experience connection in a way that feels new and healing. That's the moment when true love begins to take root. Safety doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean avoiding conflict or pretending emotions don't exist. It means emotional steadiness, an environment where the avoidant can be imperfect, uncertain, and even distant, yet still feel accepted. They need to know that when they show their fear or discomfort, they won't be shamed or chased. They need to feel that they can step back without the entire relationship collapsing. This sense of safety teaches them something powerful, that love doesn't have to be all or nothing. It can breathe. It can expand and contract without breaking. For someone with avoidant tendencies, love that feels too intense too quickly often triggers alarm rather than comfort. That's why chasing, overanalyzing, or pushing for emotional validation usually backfires. To them, that intensity feels like pressure. But when love feels calm, grounded, and respectful, their walls begin to lower. Safety to them looks like emotional predictability, someone who responds, not reacts. Someone who communicates with honesty, not demand. Someone who stays open even when they need space. When they sense that steadiness, their nervous system begins to relax and they can engage without fear of being consumed. Safety also comes from self-trust within the partner. If you know your own worth, if you don't crumble in the face of their distance, you project strength rather than desperation. That strength tells the avoidant that they're not responsible for your happiness, that your love is a choice, not a dependency. For an avoidant, that distinction is critical. They can only love deeply when they don't feel trapped in someone else's emotional needs. Safety means freedom, the freedom to feel, to step back, and to come closer when they're ready. And when they realize that love can coexist with freedom, they begin to stay longer each time. Creating emotional safety also means honoring your own boundaries. It's not about shrinking yourself to accommodate their fear, but about holding space for both your needs and theirs. You show them that safety doesn't mean silence, it means clarity. You can express your feelings calmly and directly without attacking or withdrawing. This teaches them that emotional honesty doesn't always lead to conflict, that vulnerability can exist without threat. In this way, your emotional maturity becomes a guiding light that helps them unlearn their defenses. When safety becomes the foundation, love transforms. The avoidant starts to share more of their inner world, not because they're forced to, but because they feel safe doing it. They begin to reach out first, initiate connection, and show care in their own quiet ways. These moments may seem small, but they are monumental for someone who once feared intimacy. Each step closer is an act of courage, and each time you meet that courage with acceptance, trust deepens. Eventually, love with an avoidant becomes something steady, honest, and real. It's not a love built on constant reassurance, but on mutual respect and emotional understanding. They learn that love doesn't have to cost them their sense of self. It can expand it. And you, in return, experience a love that's raw, loyal, and deeply intentional. Because once an avoidant feels truly safe, they don't just stay. They invest, they open, and they love with a depth that's unshakable. That's the power of safety. It doesn't demand love. It inspires it.